Díomh agus fáilte romh chuig an webinar seo anocht. Hello everyone, you're very welcome to our very first Codling Wind Park webinar, and thank you all for joining us. So my name is Denise Horan, I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Manager for the Codling Wind Park project team, and I'm going to be your MC for the evening. And I'm delighted to see such a strong turnout, so we've quite a few people joining already, which is great to see, and it's lovely to see such huge interest in our project at such an early stage in this project. This webinar is part of our first phase of public consultation on the project. And as you can appreciate, it's a strange time to be doing public consultation because of course we can't meet people face to face. And there's really nothing we'd love more than to be able to gather with all of you in a room this evening and do this presentation live in person. But unfortunately, that's not possible at this time. So what we've tried to do through our first phase of consultation is to create as many different ways as possible to allow people to learn about the project, share their feedback, and ask their questions. So first of all, we have our virtual exhibition, which is available to view on our website, www.codlingwindpark.ie. And hopefully you've had a chance to check it out already. If you haven't, don't worry, you haven't missed the boat. It's still live until this Sunday. So I'd urge you to take a look if you get a chance. You can also sign up for a direct call with members of the project team, and details on how to do that are also available on our website. But basically from Monday for 2 weeks, we have a series of appointments available, and all you need to do is book and you'll get to speak directly to members of the project team. And finally, we have this webinar, which is what this evening is all about. So I'm going to talk you quickly through what this evening is going to look like. So first of all, you'll see 4 brief presentations from the project team, and then we're going to delve into a Q&A. And we aim to have 30 minutes at least for the Q&A. Thanks, Dylan. Sorry, I should have asked you to move the slides forward. So as you'll see, the first 4 sections there are going to be the 4 presentations you'll hear from members of the project team. Then we'll delve into our Q&A. Now, we've already had some questions that have come in advance when people were registering, so we have some to kick us off. But I'd like all of you who are joining us live to submit questions as well. If you're not familiar with Zoom, then all you need to do is look at the control bar on the bottom of your screen, click on the Q&A box and just type in your questions. And there's no need to wait until the end. Feel free to drop in your questions as they come to mind during the presentations. Now we'll get through as many questions as we can in the time that we have, but I also aim to finish up at 8 p.m. So in the event that we can't answer all questions live, then we promise to provide responses to the outstanding questions on our website next week. This webinar is also being recorded, so we'll make it available on our website as well at a later date. Now, without further ado, let me quickly introduce you to the speakers for this evening. And you'll see them now on your screen, hopefully. So first of all, we have our project director, Arno Verbeek. Secondly, we have Paul Concannon, our land and policy manager. Nice wave there from Paul. Then we have Erland Christiansen, who's our environmental impact assessment manager. And last, but by no means least, we have our lovely community liaison officer, Liz. So that's all from me. You'll hear from me again during the Q&A session at the end. But now I'll hand over to Arno to get you started.
So thank you, Denise, and good evening, everybody. I am Arno Verbeek, Project Director for the Codling Wind Park project. I joined the project in September last year, and I'm delighted to be back in Ireland, having previously lived here for 9 years, during which time I managed the development and the construction of Arklow Bank Phase 1, which is to date Ireland's only offshore wind farm. Next slide, please, Dylan. I'm pleased that you have taken the time to learn more about our project, a project that is set to make a major contribution to how we will generate a greener future with the abundant renewable energy resources on and around our island. Wind energy has transformed Ireland's electricity system over the last 10 years, resulting in cutting millions of tons of carbon emissions while at the same time reducing our dependency on foreign fossil fuels. In 2019, the government released their Climate Action Plan, which set an ambition for Ireland becoming carbon neutral by 2050 and to double the amount of electricity generated by renewables by 2030. To help reach these goals, the Irish government has committed in its 2020 programme for government to achieving 5 gigawatts of electricity from offshore wind by 2030. Now, offshore wind is an essential component of the Irish energy generation mix if Ireland is to meet those ambitious objectives. It is also the only technology with the scale and deployment capacity to meet these objectives in full. Next slide, please. So let's take a closer look at our flagship project. Codling Wind Park is set to become Ireland's largest offshore wind farm, and at 1,500 megawatts, the largest electricity generating plant offshore and onshore. Codling Bank was first identified as a potential offshore wind site back in 1999. In 2005, Codling 1, which is the northern half of the site, was consented and received a foreshore lease. In 2009, a consent application for Codling 2, the southern half of the site, was submitted. At that time, it was estimated that the complete site would have a total generating capacity of 2,100 megawatts and up to 440 wind turbines. Today, we are developing the Codling Wind Park as one single project, with an estimated capacity range of 900 to 1,500 megawatts. The total number of wind turbines is expected to be no more than 140. At a generating capacity of 1,500 megawatts, Codling Wind Park will produce enough electricity to power 1.2 million Irish homes. That's roughly 70% of all homes in Ireland. Next slide, please. Codling Wind Park is currently being developed by Fred Olsen Renewables and EDF Renewables, two reliable and experienced developers, owners, and operators of renewable energy assets. Fred Olsen originally started as an international shipping business, but has since diversified into renewable energy, both development and construction, into real estate, into media, and also cruises. It was Fred Olsen who actually identified the Codling Bank site back in 1999. In February 2020, EDF Renewables joined the project when it acquired a 50% share. EDF is one of the largest utilities in the world and has a rapidly expanding portfolio of renewable energy assets. Its global net capacity stands at 33 gigawatts. EDF Renewables is also currently developing and building offshore wind projects in France, the UK, US, China, and here in Ireland. Next slide, please, Dylan. As well as having two strong partners behind us, we also have a strong, dedicated, and talented project team working to deliver this significant infrastructure project. When I joined the team in September last year, there were just 10 people working full-time on the project. Now that number is at 35, showing just how much momentum the project has developed in a few short months. These are people with a combination of local knowledge of energy and infrastructure development in Ireland and international offshore wind industry experience in countries like the UK and the Netherlands, where the industry is much more mature. Their experience is across a range of technical and non-technical disciplines, from environment to engineering to procurement, health and safety, and public engagement. Next slide, please, Dylan. The Codling Wind Park project is currently in the early development stages, and throughout 2021, a range of offshore and onshore environmental studies and site investigation will be undertaken. It is the project team's aim to submit onshore and offshore planning applications to Ambo Planola in early 2022. Consultation and engagement will form an important part of both these processes. And we will be holding 3 phases of public consultation, of which this is the first, over the next 12 to 15 months. Following a successful outcome of the offshore RES auction, onshore construction is currently scheduled to commence in 2024, followed by offshore construction in 2025 and into 2026. Next slide, please, Dylan. Now, the final point I would like to make that this is not just about the delivery of the Codling Wind Park project. We want to do more than that. We want to ensure that through everything we do on Codling Wind Park, we help to pave the way for the development of a long-term sustainable offshore wind industry for Ireland, for generations to come. Those of us with experience in the industry see huge potential that exists for offshore wind in Ireland. The example set by the early projects, of which Codling is the largest, will help to determine the extent to which that potential is maximized. So what does that mean? Well, Codling Wind Park wants to set the strongest example by delivering the project safely, with zero harm to people and the environment, achieving technical excellence in the way we deliver this project, building, or rather earning, trust among stakeholders at all levels, working in partnership, being generous in how we share learnings and knowledge with others, supporting the development of a strong supply chain in Ireland so the economic benefits for the country can be maximized, and finally, creating the first generation of offshore wind ambassadors in Ireland through education and training opportunities. I would now like to hand over to my colleague Paul, who will provide more details about the benefits of Codling Wind Park. Paul?
So thanks very much, Arno, for that great introduction to the project. So hello, everybody. My name is Paul Concannon, and I've had the great pleasure of having worked on Codling now for nearly 2 years. I suppose in that time, I've been heavily involved in a number of industry working groups through the likes of Wind Energy Ireland and Now Ireland. And I've seen the momentum of offshore wind in Ireland in general increase significantly to where we are now. As Arno also alluded to, I've seen Codling Wind Park core team grow from maybe just 2 or 3 people when I started to over 30 now, and that's expected to grow to 45 or 50 in the coming year. And this all just goes to demonstrate the confidence that has been shown by developers in offshore wind in Ireland. So I'm going to get to the next slide, please, Dylan. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to further outline the benefits of Codling to you now, and they fall under 3 broad categories: environmental, economic, and social. Arno has already touched on the undeniable environmental benefits of the project to you, and I will only add to that in terms of energy security. So that for Ireland, and indeed Europe, we're at the end of some very long oil and gas supply lines from the likes of the Middle East and Russia. And a project like Codling provides an opportunity to reduce Ireland's dependence on imported fossil fuels. Codling obviously brings with it a raft of economic benefits. On completion, Codling will be one of the largest generators in the country, which in itself represents a major infrastructural investment. Its construction stage will provide over 1,000 jobs. But in the operational term, there will be 70 long-term high-skilled jobs created by Codling, which will be based around locality. This will include the likes of wind farm operators, turbine technicians, and boat or CTV or crew transfer vessel operators. They will be for the lifetime of the wind farm, which will be for 25 to 30 years and hopefully beyond, and represent a real long-term economic gain for the local and marine communities. In addition, I suppose there will be opportunities for local ports. Already during the development stage, we're seeing vessels using local ports as basis for surveys, but this will continue to grow through to the operational stage when a permanent operations and maintenance base will be established for the project. Then on the social side, Codling will be setting up a community benefit fund for the benefits of local communities. This will be a multi-million euro commitment annually by the project in local communities. We're hoping to develop this in a partnership approach with the community and establish a lasting legacy for the project. The conditions of the Community Benefit Fund will be developed by the Department of Energy and Climate Change. Finally, I just want to highlight the local supply chain development opportunities that Codling will bring. Codling is one of the early stage East Coast offshore projects, also known as Phase 1 or First Phase projects. And there will be further offshore developments off the Irish coast in the coming years. We acknowledge that the Irish offshore industry is at an early stage, but we already see new companies being set up to meet the development stage of these offshore projects. And we want to support this through to the construction and the operational stages. This also brings the need for training and upskilling of people, with fishermen taking up roles as CTV operators, for example, in the UK being an example of this. but there will be other training and educational opportunities, and Codling and the industry as a whole looks forward in developing these in the coming years. So that's it for me for now, and thank you very much for your time, and I'm going to hand it back over to Denise.
Thanks very much, Paul. And just very briefly for me, everybody, we're now halfway through the presentation. So we've heard from Arno, we've heard from Paul, and so I just want to remind you to submit your questions if any come to mind. We've already received quite a few, which is great to see. Just a quick reminder, bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A button. Just type your questions in there. Okay, and now I will hand over to Ireland.
Thanks, Denise. Hello, everyone. My name is Ireland Christensen. A small bit of background about myself. I'm from Wicklow Town, and I currently live in Bray in County Wicklow. My background is in engineering, and I've been working in the offshore industries for over 10 years. This includes the oil and gas, interconnection, and marine renewables. I joined the Codling project in May 2020, and I'm working within the Codling Wind Park consenting team. So my key role is the EIA manager, which is the Environmental Impact Assessment Manager. So you've already heard about the project benefits, the project timelines, and the project background from both Arno and Paul. The next few slides are going to focus on the current activities and our next steps. Next slide, please, Dylan. Thank you. Okay, so this slide shows a schematic of what a typical offshore wind farm looks like. Firstly, we have our turbines. So it's here where the wind energy is converted to mechanical energy and then to electrical energy, i.e. electricity. The turbines are supported and secured by the foundations. The foundations support and secure the turbines essentially, and this enables the loads to be transferred safely down to the seabed. At the bottom, as you can see, we have our inter-array cables. So these are the white kind of wavy lines at the bottom. And these essentially channel and funnel the electrical energy towards the offshore substation, which is a really important part of the project. In the offshore substation, the electrical energy is converted via a series of transformers to a higher voltage electricity, and then it's exported via the export cable to shore. So it's worth noting that both the export cables and inter-array cables will be buried underneath the seabed. So the export cable comes to shore and it enters what we call that transition joint bay. And within the bay, the purpose of the bay is essentially to join the export cable that's in the marine environment to the export cable that's onshore. So it essentially joins the onshore and offshore cables. The onshore cable continues until it gets to the onshore substation, and it's here where electricity is converted via switchgear to usable electricity that's distributed to the grid. What's not on this schematic is the O&M base. So the project will also require an O&M base, which is the operation and maintenance base. And it's here where the wind farm will be serviced from. We're currently looking at different options, so the assessment is currently ongoing. Next slide, please, Dylan. Okay, this slide will take a look at the environmental impact assessment process, or the EIA process. And it's separated into three separate elements. So firstly, we're going to look at the purpose, so why we're doing it, and then the surveys, so what surveys are required to inform the EIA process, and then finally, we want to take a look at the output. So it's worth noting that the environmental impact assessment will assess all the elements from the previous slide. So it's going to cover the wind turbines, the export cable, the offshore substation, the onshore cables, and also the the onshore substation. So starting off with the purpose, the overall aim of the EIA is to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage potential environmental impacts that are associated with the construction, the operation, and the decommissioning of the wind farm. And then the surveys. So to ensure a robust EIA is conducted, detailed on-site investigations are really important to inform the environmental baseline. So here in the middle box, we have some examples of the marine surveys and also the onshore surveys. From a marine perspective, we're going to be doing ecology and ornithology surveys. So these have been done going back to 2002, so we feel we've built up a pretty good baseline already. Ornithology essentially means birds, and an example of ornithology surveys are offshore aerial surveys that require aircraft to go out and survey the site, and also we're doing landfall ornithological surveys. Also, we're going to be doing geophysical surveys, which involves vessels going out and mapping out the seabed surface and subsurface. Also, geotechnical surveys are going to happen later this year, and as per its name, the geotech surveys are going to inform the geotechnical and the mechanical properties of the seabed. So this involves recovering small core samples and conducting lab testing on these samples. And then finally, under the marine, we're going to be doing met-ocean surveys, and this involves the deployment of a variety of met-ocean equipment. For example, a wave buoy to inform the wave conditions on the site, a floating LiDAR to inform the wind conditions on the site, and ADCPs also to inform the tidal conditions. Onshore surveys are also going to be conducted, and these are just as important as the marine. These will fall under the following categories: so biodiversity, hydrology, noise assessments and noise surveys, archaeology assessments, traffic and transport surveys, and of course a really important one, landscape and visual. So the output from the EIA process is what we call an EIAR, and this is an environmental impact assessment report. So this report will be submitted with our consent application. It's worth noting that throughout the EIA process, Codling will be engaging a lot with statutory bodies, statutory consultees, non-statutory consultees, public, and also fishing associations. Next slide, please, Dylan. Okay, so this is my last slide, and again, it's separated into 3 separate areas. Firstly, we're going to look at the project activities. So what are the key activities over the next 2 years? In the middle, we're going to take a look at our key consent requirements. And then finally, on the right, a really important one, route to market. So starting off with our key activities over the next 2 years, we're going to be assessing our landfall and cable route options. So our landfall, as you recall from the earlier slide, is the area where the export cable comes to the shore. We will continue with our environmental and technical studies, surveys, and site investigations. And again, these will be used to inform the EIA process and also the engineering and the technical design of the project. We will, of course, be continuing with the stakeholder engagement and the public consultations. By way of engineering, we will be designing the wind farm, including the layout, the choice of foundations, and we will determine the optimum and least constrained cable routes. From a procurement perspective, we will be selecting our key contractors, and also we'll be submitting our planning applications. From a consents perspective, in the middle box, we will require what's called a CMAC. So this stands for the Conditional Maritime Area Consent, and we expect to have this in place hopefully in the first quarter of 2022. It's worth noting that Codling Wind Park will be submitting our consent application under new maritime legislation. And this new legislation is called the Maritime Area Planning Bill, or the MAP. So both onshore and offshore planning applications are expected to be submitted in the first half of 2022. And then finally, route to market. So we're going to be working really closely with EirGrid to determine the most appropriate location for our grid connection. And finally, the RES, which is the Renewable Electricity Support Scheme. The terms and conditions for the auction will be taking place this year, and we hope to qualify in 2022. That's all from me. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. And I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Liz Dillon.
Hi, thanks very much. That was a very comprehensive introduction about the EIA reports. Well, my name's Liz Dillon, and some of you on the call may actually already know me. I live and work in Wicklow, and I'm actively involved in several local groups and organisations. Well, I'm the Community Liaison Officer for the Codling Wind Park, and my role involves connecting with residents and local organisations, mainly by phone and email, but I'm looking forward to meeting you in person when restrictions are eventually lifted. I'll be listening to your concerns and questions and providing feedback to our management and technical teams. I will provide updates to the communities as the project progresses, and I'm working really closely with our fishing liaison officers, Trudy and Mark, who are working with our local fishermen and women. Next slide there, please. So as part of the Codling Wind Park project, we've got 3 stages in our consultation. This is phase 1. So what we've done so far is we've advertised this consultation on the local radio station, East Coast FM, local newspapers, including the Wicklow Times, the Wicklow Voice, and the Bray and Wicklow People. We've sent emails to community groups that we've engaged with since last year, and we've also included all the details about our consultation on our website. So as part of the first phase, we're hosting our virtual exhibition on www.codlingwindpark.ie. And as Denise mentioned earlier, it'll be open until Sunday, and it's worthwhile having a look at it. We're hosting tonight's webinar, and thank you all so much for logging in. And we've got 2 weeks planned of information clinics, and this is where people can pre-book a 30-minute slot to ask questions to members of our team about the project. All the details are on the website, or you can contact me directly, and there's still a few slots available next week and the following week. Phase 2 will be held later this year, and phase 3 will be held in 2022. So there'll be more sort of detailed information in the latter phases about the development of the project in those consultations. The Codling approach to the public consultation, it's about listening to how Codling Wind Park can benefit the community by using local suppliers, creating employment, and generating greener renewable energy at a low cost for customers. Your feedback is really, really important to us. My telephone number, which I have nicknamed the Codling line, is open, and it can be found on our website, or you can email me or one of my colleagues using the email addresses here on the slide. They're also all available on our website, which is www.codlingwindpark.ie. I'm going to hand you back to Denise now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Liz. And thank you very much to all the presenters. Hopefully everybody who's dialing in from home found the presentations informative and helpful. But now we're going to move into the Q&A part of the session, and we're doing well time-wise, actually, because I had hoped that we'd have 30 minutes for the Q&A, and we will have 33 minutes, hopefully, for Q&A, so that's great. So first of all, let me introduce you to our Q&A panelists. So if all our panelists could please turn on their cameras, that would be great. All right, so in addition to the 4 presenters from whom you've already heard, we also have 2 new faces on the panel. So first of all, in the center of my screen at least, we have Liz Royal, who's our consents manager. And then to her left, again on my screen, we have Rob Sheldon, who's our engineering manager. So thanks, Rob and Liz, for joining us as well. We've had a lot of questions, so it is going to be tricky to get through all of them, but we'll do our best. And as I said, any we can't get to, we will certainly address on our website next week. But okay, let me not delay any longer. I just will say that what I'm seeing through the questions that have come in so far and the ones in advance is that there are a number of similar themes. So what I'll try to do in framing some of the questions is roll a few questions into one, because they're around a similar theme. So if you don't hear the exact wording that you used in your question, it's because I'm wrapping a few in together. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start with one for you, Arno. And it's one that we hear a lot about whenever, I guess, wind farms or offshore wind is mentioned at all. And it's visual impacts. And we've tried to address this in part by putting photo montages in our virtual exhibition with which give a representation of what the project could look like from a number of different viewing points along the coast. But Arno, perhaps you can give us your take on this concern around visual impacts, because I know it's one you'll have come across a lot before. And then the related question of why the turbines can't be moved further offshore.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Denise. Let me start by saying I understand that's the concern that some people have around visual impact, because yes, the turbines will be visible, but remember they are far at sea, approximately 13 to 15 kilometers, and then extending 22 kilometers after that. 13 kilometers, keep in mind that's roughly the distance from Bray Head to Dunleary Port, so it's quite a distance. But I also want to highlight the fact is that the photo montages that we are currently displaying in our virtual exhibition room are indicative at this stage. we progressed in the design and the layout of the wind farm, we will obviously hold further exhibitions with these updated photomontages. They will show what we believe the actual wind farm will look like. Your second question regarding why not further offshore?
Yeah.
Multiple reasons. One of the reasons the Codling Bank was identified way back in 1999 as a suitable site for offshore wind energy was actually the lack of commercial shipping going across the site. And that is because the larger vessels actually avoid the site because of the shallow water depths. These vessels now pass the bank on the eastern side. And the presence of that busy shipping lane combined with the rapidly increasing water depths on the eastern side means that it was not, and it still is not, viable to install wind turbines to the east of Codling Bank. In addition to that, when the wind farm first was consented and the foreshore leaves, at the time, wind developments were not allowed to go beyond the 12 nautical mile line. 12 nautical mile is roughly 22 kilometers offshore. And that's why we are where we are.
Okay, so that actually addresses, because there was another specific question about what will the impact of the project be on shipping lanes. So what you're saying is they avoid the site.
The impact will be minimum because indeed the water depths on the bank lead to larger vessels and medium-sized vessels to avoid this particular bank, and that's why we ended up in this site. Yeah.
Okay. And Arno, another kind of related question that has come in about the visual impact and why not further offshore is, how does this compare with other European countries and with norms around distances from shore for offshore wind?
Yeah, I've seen this pop up in the media as well. What I want to say is that it's a significant number of offshore wind farms that are actually located between 1.5 and 15, 20 kilometers offshore. That is quite a significant number in Europe. And let me be very clear about it. There's no specific industry guideline when it comes to distances offshore.
Okay.
And these decisions of where the wind farm is going to be located are going to be based on a number of factors: wind speed, environmental considerations, marine traffic, to name a few, but it's much more. We'll have to take into account all the stakeholders that are active within the area. And those decisions are then made by the developers. There is no industry guideline.
Okay. So that's all clear, I think. Okay, we'll give you a breather, Arno, so for a minute. And another question, and we've had just a couple of questions around birds. And Liz Royal, this is one that may best be addressed by you. So I'll ask one specific question that has been asked around this, and it's, what will you do to ensure that the important bird life, including a protected tern colony along the Wicklow coast, is protected if this project goes ahead during construction and when the wind farm is in operation?
Sure, Denise, and it's a really good question. You know, birds or ornithology is absolutely one of the key considerations when designing offshore wind farms, but also when assessing the impacts from them, absolutely. And as Erland mentioned earlier, you know, we have built up a really good data set and understanding of the different bird colonies and species of birds that are likely to interact with our wind farm.
Yeah.
And this, you know, along with quite significant stakeholder engagement that we are planning, will inform the very rigorous environmental impact assessment that we are about to embark on. And this assessment will be completed by a highly skilled team of individuals that are specialized in their areas, including birds, marine mammals, landscape and visual, and so on. So we're obviously hoping to share more information on that at the next exhibitions and in the run-up to those as well.
Okay, so that's clear. There's a lot of work that's been done already, a lot of studies and surveys. That's now going to continue throughout the AIA process. And lots of data is going to be gathered and assessed, so you get to understand the patterns of birds. Specifically then, Liz, on the question of the tern colony along the coast, I'm guessing that's one you're familiar with and that's factored into the studies that have happened up to now and will continue.
Absolutely, we are aware of it, and it will be part of the suite of colonies that we will be including in our assessment, Denise. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's great, Liz. Thank you. Next up then is one, Liz Dillon. This is probably one for you to take. So if you want to switch on your camera there. So in his presentation, Paul mentioned the Community Benefit Fund as one of the significant benefits of the Codling project. But we've got a question, or rather a couple of questions related to this. So Liz, one is, how can local voluntary and sporting organisations apply to the Codling Fund, and when will it be open for applications? And before you start jumping in with an answer, bear with me. We have a second question, which is, how will you decide what communities are eligible for the Community Benefit Fund?
Okay, well, I think that's one of the most regularly asked questions. You know, when I'm out and about or speaking to people on the phone, you know, people are asking about the Community Benefit Fund. So, so let me say, so first of all, there will be a Community Benefit Fund. It will be worth millions of euro. It'll be paid on an annual basis, and it is expected to last for a minimum of 15 years. And basically the fund will become available once the construction is complete. That means basically once sort of the wind turbines start generating electricity, that is when the fund will open. So the way it is at the moment, the project is still it's in the early stages of design, and we're waiting for additional information from the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications in relation to the Community Benefit Fund. So for this reason, we're unable to provide detailed information about the fund at this stage. But as soon as we have the clear parameters from the department, we will share the details with the local communities.
Okay. Okay, so that's clear. Early stages, there isn't clarity yet around the Community Benefit Fund. Some of that will come from the department. We'll share that when it's available, but then there will also be engagement with the community to help work out how the fund is going to be managed and dispersed and all of that.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, there'll be engagement throughout the whole process. You know, basically, from our point of view, is we will be shaping the fund at this when we start the consultation process around it, and we will also include sort of an eligibility criteria at that. I suppose from our point of view, we really want to sort of create a lasting legacy through the Codling project, and the best way for us to do this is by working in partnership with local people and organizations.
Okay, no, makes sense. And so Liz, in relation to specific questions then, if I'm a member of a local voluntary or sporting organization or other type of organization locally, the message is the fund is not open at the moment, and won't be until construction is complete and the project is operational, but there will be a lot of engagement in the interim. And the area within which the fund will operate hasn't yet been defined either. Is that the case?
No, it hasn't been, but literally, I'm already, you know, talking to lots of sporting organizations and different organizations locally. So I'm sort of creating a database. So as soon as I have any updates, I'm literally will be doing you know, continuous sort of mail outs to various local organizations in Wicklow.
Okay. No, that's great. And again, as with everything in phases 2 and 3 of the consultation, we hope to be able to share more information.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Liz. Next one, I think, Ireland again, or Ireland rather, this is one maybe that can be picked up by you. And again, it's an area around which we hear a lot of questions. So it's about fishermen and the marine community generally, so both business and leisure users. So I'll address a couple of questions to you. Will the livelihoods of fishermen be impacted by the project? Number one. And can you guarantee that fish, including shellfish stocks, will not be depleted or at least severely impacted by the presence of the turbines?
Thanks, Denise. That's a good question. I think an important message to point out from the outset is that, you know, following construction of the wind farm, there's going to be no exclusion zones or safe passage zones within the development area or above the export cables. So certainly fishing that is happening today can continue. And you know, post-construction, this activity will continue on the site and above the cables.
Okay.
It's also worth pointing out that, you know, there are many examples around the world where existing offshore wind farms and fishing communities coexist really, really well. And there's no reason why fishing and Codling Wind Park cannot coexist. So we really believe in coexistence. However, like any potential impacts and mitigations to marine mammals or fish will be assessed in a comprehensive EIAR. So this is the Environmental Impact Assessment Report. And this impact assessment, it's going to be developed in consultation with a wide range of stakeholders, and to include fishing communities and also the angling associations.
Yeah.
So we're going to be engaging with, the statutory bodies or the statutory consultees like the Marine Institute, Sea Fisheries Protection Agency, Inland Fisheries Ireland, NPWS are just some examples. And like we really do very much welcome meetings and input from all stakeholders, especially from the fishing community, to help us build an accurate picture of local fishing behaviours across the site.
Yeah.
And then finally, like I guess it's probably worth pointing out that there are national and international studies have found that the development of offshore wind farms have had a minimal impact on the marine environment.
Okay. So lots of engagement going on, and we're already engaging with lots of different organizations and representative bodies and individuals, and that will continue throughout the AIA process and throughout the whole project, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And actually, Arno, I might bring you in here as well for a moment, if you don't mind, on that. Thank you, Ireland. The second part of that question, which was about the depletion of fish stocks and shellfish. And I know I've heard you speak previously in other presentations about examples from other projects that you've worked on where actually there was a replenishment of stocks, and there was a particular term used to describe that type of approach. Could you maybe explain it a little more articulately than me?
Yeah, doing very well, Denise. But yeah, you're referring to what we call the nature inclusive design.
Oh yes.
This is a concept that I successfully implemented actually at my last two projects in Belgium and in the Netherlands. The concept basically has the objective to increase the suitable habitat of naturally occurring species within the wind farm site. How do we do this? By installing what we call fish hotels, oyster cages. And we're also looking at how can we optimize the scour protection design, so that scour protection, which is basically big boulders that we put around the foundations to prevent scour, that scour can be used by species to spawn. And this is particularly relevant for native species that are under pressure because of overfishing, such as cod.
Okay.
And also very interesting, especially with regards to the oyster cages, is that we started looking at reintroducing once native species that are no longer there. This was the case in Holland, for instance. And I understand this is the case as well here in Ireland, and certainly on looking through my literature, I certainly saw a lot of reference to oysters being cultivated on the bank many years ago. So that is something certainly we want to pursue. My view on this is that the concept is certainly based on sound principles.
Yeah.
And we certainly want to implement this at the Codling Wind Park.
Okay. No, sounds good. And can you just tell me quickly?
Sorry to interrupt there. I'd just like to reiterate the point again, just with the fisheries engagement, because I'm not sure if I captured it. Like, we will be engaging comprehensively with the fishing industry, and we have appointed 3 separate FLOs, and we've also 2 FIOs. So I'd just like to stress that we're going to continue this engagement throughout the project lifecycle. I just wanted to make that point. Yeah.
No,
thanks.
yeah, no, good point to add, Ireland. No, thank you. And Arno, before we finish up on that point, what are fish hotels?
It's just a sheltered area for fish to indeed spawn and do so safely without being interrupted while they're doing so. It's a fancy name.
Okay.
Or even a pipe.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of approach where the project could help to replenish or enrich or reintroduce some native species that are no longer there is an approach that you plan to take on the project.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, great. And Arno, while I have you, I'm going to hold you for another minute. There's a question in here, and actually there are 2 kind of variations of this. So one is, you talk about providing electricity to 1.2 million Irish homes. what happens to those homes when the wind isn't blowing off the east coast. And we had another variation of that came in, which I think was about how can storage capacity be increased? So why would we be relying on offshore wind when we can't trust or rather because of the intermittency of wind?
Okay, I think I can answer both questions with one answer. When the wind is not blowing off the east coast, those homes will still have electricity, because Ireland, like most countries, does not rely on the one single electricity generating technology. So we have solar, we have battery storage, we have backup generation, but most importantly, we have grid interconnection with Europe and the UK. And all of that will ensure that the lights will stay on in Ireland.
Okay. Okay, and then so I see that actually the other related question here was, what's the plan to store wind generated electricity to avoid switching on fossil stations when the wind isn't blowing?
Well, that's a good point. We obviously would like to see as well a decrease in the use of fossil-fired backup generation, and I think with the increase of renewables in general in Ireland, so offshore, onshore wind, but also solar, you will see a steady decrease of the need to use that backup generation. Will we ever get there? I don't know. Will it be fully renewable? Once again, like I said, I think that it is wise for countries to not rely on single electricity generation technology, and that's why I personally, when I got asked this question by the press or by others, is that I remind them that the interconnection with Europe, the grid interconnection, is absolutely critical. Because for those few days that the wind doesn't blow and there's no sunshine and there might be issues on the grid in Ireland itself, we still have the capability to import that electricity into Ireland. But more importantly, on those days that it is really windy, and it happens quite a lot in Ireland, even today we saw a classic example of that. We are able to sell that surplus of electricity to other countries.
Okay, no, that's clear. Thanks, Arno. And actually, a slightly related question, that one maybe Paul can take. It's a broader question about the grid, Paul. So based on your kind of experience of the industry and working with various industry groups, maybe you can have a go at it. So how realistic is the target of 5 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030 with the capacity we have in the Irish electricity grid? Will we not end up exporting the majority of this electricity?
Okay, so I think there's potentially two parts to that question. The first one is the capacity of the grid, and the second one, in terms of exporting, sort of feeds back to what Aaron was just after speaking about, in terms of interconnection and things like that. I think the first one. So in terms of the capacity of the grid, so initially I suppose we have to build a grid power line from Codling into onshore, and we've been working on that for we've been developing the wind farm for nearly 20 years, so we've been doing, there has been a lot of work done on that, and we're also obviously working with EirGrid, and you will have noticed that EirGrid recently, just a few days ago, published a consultation paper for the public to have their say on how they're going to meet the 2030 targets. So they've also highlighted what's called reinforcement, which is work behind our grid connection that needs to be done. So there's a lot of work already there. We sort of know already what reinforcement needs to be done to the system, and that will be put in train over the coming years. So in terms of structural infrastructure, I think it's, that's deliverable by 2030. There's also another thing it's important about, and this links back in with the export question, is the system demand in Ireland. System demand has been growing in Ireland, since we've come out with the economic crash. It's a bit of a mixture of economic growth and population growth, but also there's a change to the green energy. So a lot of the renewables is driven by electricity is a very important element in renewables, because it's one of the easy things for renewables to produce. So the likes of houses turn to electric heating, electric cars, and as well, I suppose, data centers. They're quite there's quite a growth in demand for great data centers. So in terms of Codling itself, we will be entering into the renewable electricity supply scheme auction next year, which is for the import of electricity into the Irish system. So we don't export any energy, but overall the system needs to balance itself. So as we grow with our renewable target up to 70% by 2030, we're going to need more interconnection. And so we've already got 2 interconnectors, one in Northern Ireland and one up in Meath called EWIC, run by EirGrid. There's plans for 2 further ones. Another one going to the UK called Greenlink, and then another one by EirGrid going to France called Celtic Connector. But there may be more interconnectors built as part of this. Is this balancing of the system when the wind blows on Europe? It might be more gentle here, and that's the import and export that's going to happen. So what will actually happen? You will have more export, but you'll have more import as well to balance the system.
Okay, so essentially, it gives that interconnection gives you more flexibility, and then in terms of the grid, we're confident that EirGrid that there will be capacity in the grid, but that's a kind of a complex puzzle as well, as you mentioned.
No doubt about it. There's a lot of work to do there. There's a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Okay, so and that's what the consultation is about. And actually, there was another kind of slightly related question there. You mentioned data hubs. So we had the question: will this type of electricity be expensive at the consumer end? And also, you say 1.2 million homes, but are all those new data hubs going to consume a lot of this electricity? And I suppose we should clarify that what we mean is the volume of electricity that could be generated through Codling will be equivalent to the amount of electricity required by, or the equivalent of the electricity that will be required to power 1.2 million Irish homes. It's not necessarily saying that will go into homes as opposed to anywhere else.
So again, the first part of the question is the price of electricity from offshore. Throughout Europe, we've seen the price of electricity from offshore really fall over the last few years, and so what we expect to continue to happen. It's pretty much equivalent in some countries where there's a very mature industry. It's pretty much equivalent to the price of onshore, and in some countries it's actually beating it's beating fossil fuel generators in cost. So we expect that curve to continue to continue. So in terms of it being expensive, I wouldn't suggest it's good. It's going to be much more expensive than maybe an onshore project in Ireland at the moment. In terms of where the electricity goes and data centers, we'll export onto the grid, and the grid balances where that electricity goes. There is growth for obviously there's no hiding from the fact that the data center demand in Ireland is relatively significant, I suppose, around the Dublin area. But in terms of Codling, being such a large project, it's going to be delivered to the grid in general, so the grid will decide.
So that's not a matter for us to decide.
No.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, really. Yeah, lots of complexity there, but very interesting. Thank you. I'm going to move down to a couple of engineering type questions. So, Rob, that's your cue to come in. So, first of all, in the exhibition, you talk about fairly wide height ranges for the turbines, and you say there will be up to 140 in total. You also mentioned that each turbine will be between 11 and 16 megawatts. How will you decide on the final number of turbines, their height, capacity, and distribution on the seabed? So I guess essentially, how will you weigh up all of those factors and decide on the final layout and configuration of the wind farm?
Okay, so in its simplest form, it's an iterative approach. We'll take inputs from the various surveys that are going on at the moment, the planning consents, these consultations, and that will give us information about the site and what we can and can't do. Then we'll enter into a design loop where the aim really is to maximise the energy yield we can get from the wind farm. So this is the wind doesn't blow evenly across the whole site, and the turbines interact with each other. And then we'll be looking at how the electrical system is balanced across the whole site. The ultimate aim is to come up with a balanced solution that complies with all the constraints we have to deal with, all the planning consents, and that balanced solution will aim to be the lowest cost development for the wind farm. So the easiest way to think about it is you've got some limitations, some constraints you have to deal within. There are different ways to solve the same problem. We'll spend time going through different sensitivity studies and seek a balanced solution that will probably be some point early next year when we're in a position to share that. So around about the next consultation time.
Okay, so with the next consultation, hopefully during the summer. At that stage, we'll be able to share more information, and then
Yeah.
prior to planning submission next year, again, get more information.
Yes.
Because I guess as well, the EIA informs the design process, doesn't it, in the sense that that helps identify all of your constraints.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's not, we can't go and build what we want to build. We have to build what fits in with what we're allowed to.
Yeah. Okay. No, and then there's we had a request actually that came in when somebody was registering, just to say, please include some of the technical aspects of the wind park in the webinar: foundation types, cable interconnector types, land connection point, cable voltages, etc. We haven't included that in the webinar, and I guess that's for the same reasons, because we haven't got to that level of detail yet where we can provide specifics on what any of those things will look like.
Exactly. It's an iterative process. There are pros and cons of each of these things. We've got to weigh them up in the design process, and when we can share more information, we will. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. Thank you, Rob. I want to move next to one that Arno, maybe you could pick up as well, and it's about the decommissioning process, essentially. So we've had, again, a few versions of this question. So what happens in 25 to 30 years' time? What happens to the wind farm when it comes to its end of life?
If you ask me personally, I would say keep it going, because you have a major electricity producing plant sitting there using renewable energy without emitting harmful carbon emissions into the atmosphere. But with the planning application, we will submit a decommissioning plan. This is required by government. That decommissioning plan will outline how we will decommission the wind farm at the end of its life. So that would most likely involve removing the wind turbines and the foundation. That plan will be reviewed by Onboard Planola as well. We'll go to the usual channels to ensure that it is a realistic plan and that it indeed is not or it will not impact the environment at the time when it comes to decommissioning. But once again, my personal view is, why would you remove it?
Okay. So, but as part of the consents that we hope to get for Codling, there will be a decommissioning plan. And then once that's achieved, then you must implement that decommissioning plan.
Of course,
so it's not like
of course. It's just my personal view, but yeah. We will adhere to the law. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's clear. Thanks, Arno. Okay. I'm conscious that we're nearly out of time, but Ms. Royal, I'm going to bring you back in just to throw a couple of rapid questions at you, and one slightly lengthier one. So first of all, are there going to be flashing lights on the top of the turbines?
Well, that is a very good question. There won't be flashing lights. Preferably, there will be some form of aviation lighting on the turbines.
Okay.
But obviously at night time, we're going to seek to look at solutions where we maybe don't need to keep them lit. There may be solutions that we can look to implement from the continent, for example, in Netherlands, where they use radar technology so that it's not visible. It's not visible to the human eye, but it meets the kind of aviation safeguarding and health and safety guidelines. So we will absolutely seek to implement that, but we will need to look into that in more detail during the environmental assessment.
Okay. So for aviation purposes, there will be some form of lighting. Okay.
There will be, yes.
And Liz, just as quickly as you can then as well, probably not a simple question, but what are the planned next steps for identifying the onshore cable routes and substation locations?
Yes. So we are currently undertaking an optioneering assessment to identify the preferred landfalls, cable routes and substation locations for each of our 3 potential connection points. So this optioneering study sort of takes into consideration, the environment, ecology, human receptors, residential properties, businesses, or proximity to them, obviously engineering, design and feasibility, landowners, a host of considerations to identify appropriate routes. And we are going to be submitting our onshore scoping document in a couple of weeks' time. Some further information will be available in that document, and it will be on our website. And then by the time we get to our next public exhibitions, we're hoping to be able to showcase the routes, but significant community engagement will be, we will engage in that as we develop the plans, and we will of course keep communities and our stakeholders in the loop on how this progresses. So exciting times ahead.
Yeah, no, indeed, and busy times ahead as well. Okay, no, Liz, thank you very much, and thanks to all our panelists. Unfortunately, time has caught up with us. We haven't got round to answering all the questions because there were quite a few, but we have got round to answering quite a number of questions. So we covered questions on a range of different topics, from visual impact to community benefit to impacts or potential impacts on birds. We had questions on engineering and how we'll determine the final layout of the wind farm. We had questions related to the electricity grid and how is that going to be able to meet the demand or the objectives that Department have set up to 2030. So yeah, we got through quite a bit, but unfortunately we didn't get to all of them. I see there is a question in here about supply chain, and will, let me see now, I just want to address this one quickly. Will the Codling Wind Park project team actively support Irish suppliers through introductions and supplier open days with access to the tier 1 and tier 2 contractors? So I just like on that one to point people to our website. So we do have a supply chain page. You can sign up there to register, and then you will be informed about these events that will be happening in the months ahead as the procurement process progresses. So certainly it is our intention to engage with and provide opportunities to the Irish supply chain. Yeah, so we will put the remainder of our questions, or answers to the remainder of our questions rather, on our website. All that remains now is for me to thank all of our presenters again. Hopefully you found all of the presentations informative. Hopefully you found the Q&A part of the session engaging and lively. And we hope that you'll continue to stay up to date with the Codling Wind Park project as it progresses. As I mentioned, this is only our first phase of public consultation. There will be 2 further phases. We hope to have the second phase during the summer, when hopefully we will be able to resume face-to-face, in-person activities. But for now, that's not possible. So until we see you again, do stay safe. Gurmila Mahagwif, Agus Slán Tamil.